Seeking the Wise.
With Aaron and Alexander discussing the Just philosophy.
Covering self-development, emotional processing, conscious relationships, and 5 levels of overall wellness.
Welcome back to the Wise podcast. Once again, I am Aaron Keith, and along with me is Alexander the Great.
So good to be with you, beautiful people, and connecting with Aaron again. Let's see what we're going to get into discussing today through the wise, and just philosophy view.
I felt like that intro kind of sounded like an old school Sports Center intro.
Right. That's what we were talking about just before we got on.
Yeah. But today we are going through reading some stories from the Am I Overreacting Reddit thread. You guys may be familiar. We've done the last, I think, 4 or 5 episodes on this where we're reading stories where real people are asking for help in their current situations. And we are taking that opportunity to inject some consciousness into the situation. So you guys out there who find yourselves in similar experiences from time to time, you'll be able to tap into some of this and take it along in your journey. So the first story title is Am I Overreacting? Gaslighting, but we both think we are right. And this is all too common. And I think this story is pretty general. It's not as specific, but I think it's great to bring in these types of situations because this can happen in relationships where you both think you're right and then the other person thinks you're gaslighting them and all that. Mm-hmm. So here we go. I'm keeping this short because it's so frustrating. Sometimes I will hear my boyfriend say something and then he will say he didn't say it. I could literally hear him say something, but once I pointed out, maybe he didn't mean to say it or forgot. Whenever I stand on the point and say, yes, you said blank, and then he will say, no, and get mad thinking I made it up. I literally have perfect hearing as tested recently. But that's not to say in the past I've misheard things because of other noises going around. Does this ever happen to you in your relationships? My boyfriend is frustrated too because I won't believe him, and he wants to break up because of all of this buildup. He makes it out like he is more reliable than I am because of all this past stuff. It doesn't feel fair. I know he's frustrated too, so maybe I should let him go even though I really don't want to. Am I overreacting?
I think this is, as you said, very common because there's a lot of competition in relationships. And through our destiny card system, we can point out, like, anytime there's Mars connections, it brings on this type of what I just call silly competition that a lot of people don't see it as competition or they don't want to. But anytime you need to prove your point or prove somebody wrong, that's a competitive action. You know, there's a lot of internal work that can be done there that when you stop looking for other people's approval, which is what this is about, you're looking for external recognition and approval, then you learn to conserve your energy so much more. And you learn that you're either looking for people that are going to be on the same or very similar page as you, or it's like trying to force a square peg into a round hole. It doesn't work. And so I think the very start of this, people aren't clear in what they're looking to get out of relationships, and they're not clear in what they're looking to give relationships. That's 2 of the 5 main ingredients or perceptions to being in a relationship from the Just philosophy. We were even talking earlier about somebody not knowing what they're looking for in a partner. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you don't know what you're looking to get out of a relationship or what you're looking to give, this is where a lot of people are. They're not clear on that. So they can just be involved in a lot of dysfunction. And this is a typical type of dysfunction that this person is bringing up here. But it does reveal that these 2 people just aren't on the same page. It's not that one's right and one's wrong. They're just not on the same page together and truly looking to develop communication at many different levels, or they wouldn't be going through this level of resistance. And it sounds like he's, from her view, ready to end the relationship. So this can turn into a baiting type of situation. Is he just looking to create stuff, either consciously or subconsciously, to get out of a relationship. And this is important. The important part about learning to read energy and not pay so much attention to words, but to understand conscious communication is really, from the Just Philosophy's perception, about 75% energy transference and 25% words. But our culture gets very flip-flopped in that and puts way too much effort into the words that are being used instead of the message that's behind the choice of words.
Yeah, I think a lot of people find themselves in this situation because they want to be in a relationship and they want to stay in a relationship. But clearly there's miscommunications happening here, and that's a sign that you're not compatible, or that, kind of like what you mentioned, he could be subconsciously sabotaging the relationship, but not from a point that it's his fault. So he's trying to project it onto her so that it's easy for him to walk away and then not feel like he's at fault at all. So I think this is prevalent nowadays because there is a lack of, emotional responsibility and accountability within a relationship for somebody's own emotions and emotional triggers and traumas and reactions. But we're all looking at relationships as if they're like one size fits all. Like, I want to be in a relationship, so I need to protect this. And I just need to do whatever it is to make this okay. But in this situation, it just seems like they're not on the same page. And I think that the default way, like when I'm betting that if I go through the comments, everybody's going to be against the dude and saying, oh, he's gaslighting you. You shouldn't stand for this. You just exit the relationship. But again, we don't know what's happening here.
Right.
But we do know that they're not communicating, from a neutral standpoint. So that's kind of where we can probably take this situation and run with it, where if people are experiencing something like this in their relationships, then maybe they should look at what is not working. And then, like you mentioned before, like, what is your intention of a relationship? Do you want to communicate in a relationship? Because maybe this isn't the situation for you.
Yes, and it's a very good point, and I want to be sure to get to that, so pull me back in if I get away from it. But what I wanted to mention right away is that in this situation, one of the most important things to get across from the philosophy's view is this term gaslighting. And there's other terms like narcissist and different terms, but see, through our philosophy, we want to get rid of those terms, because I happen to feel that someone's only going to so-called gaslight me one time, and then there's going to be boundaries set, and there's going to be communication. And if they're not able to get on the page with that communication, then I'm not going to spend time around or with that person. And so I want that to be empowering, first of all. And this is connected to one of the it's the fourth pillar out of the 5 pillars of the philosophy, is emotional responsibility and accountability. And getting away from that anyone can make you mad, that anyone can make you sad, and to understand that we actually choose these emotions. And that's a very empowering statement. Now, understand that the certain emotions are drilled into us through our family and patterns and that type of thing, but this self-development work is about breaking these patterns. And the first step, from my view, is to get rid of these labels and these terms that project that it's somebody else doing something to you or to us. So now bringing that back around to what you just last said, that, what does it mean to be on the same page? The very first step of that is that we're always going to communicate lovingly. And that if we can't communicate lovingly, then we're going to separate. I don't mean like move out of the house or anything like that, or break up the relationship. I'm not talking about that level of separation, but to give space to both parties. And that may be for minutes, it may be for hours. But the key here is to create a pattern to where we only speak when we've got each other's best interest at heart, and that we're looking for a resolve. And many people that play these mind games, both consciously and subconsciously, see, they're not looking to develop these level of communication and connection and vulnerability. They're looking to compete. They're looking to win something. They're looking to hold something over their partner. And none of those is building towards intimacy. So here we have possibly, this happens a lot, one person that's really interested in developing intimacy and another person that's maybe not so crazy about it or really don't understand what intimacy is. They just want to be with somebody. And this creates these types of problems. So I think it's very important for the listeners to get clear and really hear what their partner is trying to say, not just the words they use, but pay attention to how long they pause or how quickly they respond out of reaction to say, hey, are we looking to develop intimacy and communication and to stay loving? Or are we looking to challenge each other? And see, one's just a more feminine way to approach it, and one's a more masculine way. And they're caught in a very masculine way, which is where competition breeds.
Yes, and we teach others how to treat us by what we put up with. So we can even bring in the whole like empath and narcissistic plane of duality, but polarity in this situation, and talk about that because I'm betting in the comments somebody's calling this guy a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
But in order for somebody to be a narcissist in a situation, you have to allow that.
Right.
And the empath isn't anymore at fault in a empath narcissist relationship because they're both allowing each other to be there based on what they have to learn in this relationship, possibly as one of the lessons. So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit and what that empath narcissistic relationship really is saying.
Because it could be said that, empath's duty in this lifetime is to learn how to set boundaries. And when you have sensitivities, learning to set boundaries with people, places, and things is very important. The sensitivities are a gift, but a lot of people let their empathic natures overcome them, make them isolated, make them very judgmental, because they don't know how to set proper boundaries. And in order to be able to do that, they have to attract somebody into their life that is going to play a demeaning, a judging role, a flip things around type of competitive energy. And so, see, neither one of them's right, neither one of them's wrong. They're both necessary. Unfortunately, when this comes up in an intimate relationship, it's the most damaging typically. But see, somebody can choose a work maybe a workmate or work employee or a boss to work some of this energy in because the point is to be able to shift your perspective when you're going into that resistance. And for the empath, they typically want to shut down and retreat. So their work to do, so to say, is to say, I'm going to stop you right there and ask you to please not cross that line. Because when you say this in this manner, it makes me question myself, and I'm not looking to be around people that make me question myself. And then the person that's doing the so-called attacking, they have the opportunity to say, oh, no, something's been misconstrued. I really mean this, and to change the words and hopefully give more information to help bridge that gap, or to own it and say, you know what? Yeah, I just subconsciously took advantage of that opportunity to belittle you because I got belittled at work today and I need to feel good about myself. And this was a poor way for me to choose to do that. Or is to deny it and to say, no, I didn't do that. And then the empath, they stop trying to prove that it happened. And they just go, okay, well, we can just stop this conversation because until you're aware that this is happening, I'm just going to stop communicating with you and remove myself from the room each time this happens to give you some time to reflect, not to be in reaction. So see, both parties have an opportunity to grow here, but the main thing I want people to hear is that both parties are not dependent on growth happening. We just need initiation into these deeper levels of self-development. And then the work is done like away in processing and coming up with maybe who that reminds them of. It could be a father figure. It could be an authority figure. And to realize that they've still got some healing to do in that area. that is why they're so sensitive to a so-called narcissistic tendencies. And again, I'm only using these labels for communication purposes. I feel that they create their own little prisons when we use these labels, but this is why it comes down to the general saying in the philosophy: if it's challenging for you to do, then more than likely it's good for you. And that's a good default point to keep in mind.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean stay in the relationship if it's not working for you, but if she leaves, or if they break up and she leaves the relationship but doesn't do the work, she's more likely to, again, attract somebody very similar in energy, and she probably won't notice that until after.
Yes.
And she'll have to learn this all over again.
Yeah, that's the thing. And many times when people are just meeting, they're not being open and vulnerable and honest because they're trying to conquer something or someone. And so that's the challenge with this, and why people just repeat patterns over and over, is that if they do bring a so-called narcissistic type of person, if they leave one and they don't do their internal work to learn about boundaries, learn about patience, because, they're all going to show their true colors eventually. This is why I like to suggest a 2-year period before you truly trust that you know who somebody is, and to see them in a period long enough for the honeymoon period to go by, and then them to kind of recalibrate back to old patterns before they met you. And that's when you begin to really see someone's true colors. But it helps in your level of intimacy in communication, and that time can be shortened drastically through proper communication and both parties being vulnerable and pointing out possibly things that they need to work on, and then ways that the other person can be actually helpful to them. These are the type of things that I help people with in my private sessions. Yeah.
All right. I think that wraps that one up. Thank you for tuning in and listening to this free full version of the Wise podcast. Now, before we get back to the episode, I just want to take a second and say, if you are loving what you're hearing, we do have a complete conversation premium subscription option where you can get all of our back 160 plus episodes to utilize and further your self-growth journey. And you can do that by going to the wisewisepodcast.com, click on the Get Complete button at the top, and follow the instructions. If you have any issues, you can reach out to me and I will help you take care of them. But this is for the serious individuals who are ready to take that next step, ready to make their self-growth journey a priority, ready to enhance their relationships all around, ready to accept the world for how it is and no longer be torn by the duality of the external reality. Oh, I like that. So if that's you, if you want to take that next step, consider supporting us on this journey and sharing this information. Now, if you're looking for a little more Alexander and maybe a private consultation, you can reach out to him at his website, thejustphilosophy.com, or email him at alexander@thejustphilosophy.com. On his website, you will see his different offerings, a variety of relationship coaching, energetic design consultations where we'll look at your human design chart and your destiny cards and provide a personal prescription for you. If you're in the North Carolina area, Alexander also has a variety of different sound journey events that are being posted on his website. He also is the inventor of the Vibertune sound therapy table, which 15 minutes on this vibrating table, listening to music that he composed, leaves you in a state of contentment. It feels like an energetic blanket has just laid upon you and you're back in the womb. It's a really great experience. So if you're in the North Carolina area and you want to reach out to him to even just ride the table, reach out to him at his email address. And of course, he has a variety of other tools and music that he's composed that you can get there. So anyway, with that said, I want to get you back to the rest of this episode and thank you for working on you. So, second story, am I overreacting about my husband's quote joke, end quote. My 45 female, so the person writing this is a 45-year-old female and her husband is 46 male. So my husband and I have been bickering the last few days. he's been cranky because he has trouble sleeping, stressing about getting his meds filled since he switched insurances, is a type 1 diabetic, and he has been snipping at me, just rude for no reason, and I was annoyed by it. Yesterday, I worked my second 11-hour day this week. I'm a teacher, and we've had parent-teacher conferences at school. Then went and picked up his prescription that was finally ready and got home around 7. I was exhausted. He was rude from the second I walked in the door. So I gave him his prescription and said, I'm going to go upstairs and die now, just meaning I was exhausted and wanted to crawl into bed. His response, without missing a beat, was to say, promise? Mind you, this was said in front of my kid, who's a 17-year-old female. I am so appalled by this. It feels vicious, not funny. I told him that was a horrible thing to say, and I went upstairs. We didn't speak the rest of the night except for him to get his blankets and pillows to sleep on the couch because he was mad. There was no apology. I'm well aware he has anger issues and trouble managing his temper, and he needs therapy badly. We have not gotten him set up with it yet due to the insurance change, although we are in family therapy with the kids. They have a boy-girl twins that are 17, which are hers from her first marriage. And the kids and I are in regular individual therapy. I just feel so deeply hurt and disgusted by this comment, but am I overreacting? So we could also ask, is he overreacting too? Because she said that he was mad. And this is so funny because this reminds me of when you're in like traffic and somebody cuts you off and you beep at them and they get mad because you beeped at them.
Yep. Very common.
Had that experience a few times, but
this, it's, again, this happens more often than not probably in relationships, but it seems that she's failing to see that she opened the door by her phrase of, I'm just going to go upstairs and die. So she took it to an extreme, so he matched that extreme. I call this poking the bear. Like, she already knows that he's aggravated, irritated, stressed, all those types of things. So when you know this about a person, the suggestion is to be very aware of the word choice that you're choosing. She could have just said, I'm going to go upstairs. I'm exhausted. Is there anything else that you need that I can help you with? No. Okay. I'm going to go. So again, my advice to everyone I talk to, even socially, professionally, whatever it is that first step is to take responsibility of where you see that you did something less than optimal. And instead of focusing on him, I think it would be most useful to her to realize that I could have not opened that door by using a different phrase. And now I'm spending all my energy on thinking about how I'm reacting to his reaction, when I'm going to empower myself and say, my bad. Next time I got the response that equals the level of extreme that I put out there. And so I think this is just a wonderful check-in, because when you get into who is overreacting more, again, that's just an opinionated, that you can get many different answers from. But when you take it from, where did I act less than optimal? In this, it was the beginning. She wasn't in reaction to something that he had said or done at that point, not aware of it, but her extreme choice of verbiage was showing frustration that she's having to still take care of him or do this for him after she's worked 11-hour days and gone to a parent-teacher conference. So, she voiced her extreme through experiencing frustration and negativity, and then she didn't like what she received back. When I just feel that he just matched that level of extreme. Both were uncalled for, and both not necessary, not useful in developing conscious relationship or conscious communication.
Yeah, and we don't know if he was kidding. And with situations like this, like, again, like you said, he's in this energy, she knows, and it could have just been a reaction. And now she's mad. So now he feels mad because he may know that he messed up, but now he doesn't want to take responsibility and apologize because, again, probably emotional accountability and responsibility is not something that he is familiar with
Sure.
or has worked on. So then it becomes this game of this push-pull energy where now he's upset, maybe at himself, but now it's projecting onto her, and it's like, this is why we say, and you've even reduced this philosophy down to, this is really about not communicating when you're not neutral or when you're in an emotional reaction
Yeah.
or when you're off center, because things will become misconstrued, and it's like a runaway train. Now it's so hard to get back, and it's something that was so simple and possibly a misunderstanding.
Yeah, sure. I mean, she would have had the opportunity. Of course, she's exhausted, and we want to take that into account too. But when she said, "I'm going to go up here and die," and he said, "Will you, or do you promise," or whatever, see, she could have nipped it in the bud right there and said, "You know what? My fault. That was a poor selection. I'm not going to go up here and die. I'm just exhausted. Thank you for sharing your view of my extreme. You know, that lets me know where your mind's at." And then see, he has the opportunity then to apologize for it, or to just say, no, it's really just me. I'm tired, or I'm stressed, or whatever, to take some ownership. But they're both the furthest away from taking ownership that they can be, and that's what this turns into. It's very typical. That's just a projection on both parties, and then it becomes a waiting game. And whoever is more independent typically wins the time game, and can last longer, and the other person gives in, and then this creates a pattern. And that's what a lot of this is, just habitual patterns that get created in relationships, and normally people bring that from their childhood, and however the dysfunction went down in their childhood, they bring that right into their present day situations. People become their parents no matter how much you don't want to, unless you do a lot of personal self-development work, breaking family lineage, and there's a lot of work there. So I'm sure both of these parties have a lot to unpack where their families are concerned, but that would probably be, a place for both of them to get clear on how they're playing family lineage patterns and creating themselves, rather than working towards communication and more of a connection.
So I'm going to just take a quick detour from this story and bring in my personal life. I don't know if we've talked about this. Maybe I've asked you in our private conversations, but coming from what I observed with my parents, my dad seemed to be the more reasonable person, the more logical person, which is probably the default, and my mother was very emotional, and she could convince herself of like an alternate reality that didn't exist, based on her emotional reaction. And then my parents just could not communicate. It was done. My mom had an emotional reaction. My dad couldn't talk sense into her. And that was kind of their relationship, but they just never were able to communicate. So me growing up, I kind of saw that, and that kind of manifested into, I'm going to call it like commitment issues, but to me, I feel like I have like a hard boundary now where well, I have a fear that if I ever got married, that would happen, where, you're on the same page and then suddenly somebody changes and now you feel completely trapped because you can't communicate. And if you can't communicate, then there's no relationship, because there's no relating. And so I don't know if that has played a role in me with commitment issues, because honestly, until I started doing this work, there was no way I was going to be ready to have a honest and open relationship anyway. But I've been told by other people that that's my childhood trauma. And so I could see it being labeled as that, but to me, I used it to create a boundary so that I would only put myself in that situation if it was healthy. So, like labeling something as trauma, that makes it kind of have like this negative connotation, like, oh, I need to work on something there. But if I realize why I did it, then I'm just using it as a boundary so that I prevent myself from being in those situations.
Yeah, I think that's a very vulnerable and good point to bring up, because in this situation, there is those family lineage type traumas. Again, when that word's used, it never normally has a negative connotation. But what I feel like helps that is when you can say, well, this is the part of me that is like my dad in this situation, to where I want to talk things out logical and come up with a resolve or what. And then here in this other type of scenario, I can see that I'm like my mom, to where maybe I overreact from time to time, or I get a little bit too much in my head. And to be able to say that shows an awareness that I'm aware of how these two people and their traumatic or toxic connection or inability to communicate, just how it has affected me. And that when I'm in those situations and I catch myself or somebody points that out, I'm more than willing to make an adjustment there, because I want to correct those things. But see, until the person is able to bring out in what areas of their life they are both their mom and their dad, exemplifying that. See, people look for exact things to replicate, and because they're not exact, they'll say, oh, I'm not like my dad, because he would just yell at my mom and wouldn't even be interested in a resolve, and I'm always interested in a resolve. See, again, that's being the judge, where we talk about being the investigator and going, find where you do that like your dad. Find where you do that like your mom. And then be able to communicate that, hey, I want help. I'm working on this in these areas, and I want you to point it out. And then the defensiveness is going to come up. And then that's the work. When somebody points that out, you got to be willing to hear. The very first step is to not deny, to not say, no, I'm not, or you're seeing that wrong, to just listen, go sit with input, come to your own senses. Once again, being an investigator, if you're the investigator, you can always find what the person is trying to relay and get across to you, but they may use the wrong words. So that's where the judge wants to resist that. Instead of going, you know what? I may not be in agreement with exactly what you said, but you've given me something to contemplate on. I'm going to go sit with this. I'm going to be with this. And I'll come back to you and maybe we can discuss it after I get some clarity. But I wanted to give those steps. That's very, very important, because I think it's healthy conversation just in general. I'd love to see society talking in a way to where it's, oh, this is the baggage I brought from my mom, and this is the baggage I brought from my dad. This is where I work on this, my mom stuff. This is where I work on my dad stuff. And I invite anybody in when you see me failing to please point it out in a loving way, because I want to continue being as authentic and developing as I can.
Yeah, and I will consider those things. You've given me something to look at. Because yeah, I haven't. I mean, I guess maybe I have, but not intentionally, or not like sat down and looked at where I have my mother's tendencies, because it's almost been like a resistance point for me to not be like that.
It is most people, and that's what we
Yeah.
want to shift right away, to see that, like my mom happened to be one of the least judgmental people that I've ever met in my life. So she inspired me that. She is that for me. But see, I don't compare myself to her, use her for inspiration. But the downside of that, and this is also useful to see the so-called positive and the so-called negative of the same gift. So the gift is the non-judgment. The cost is that she let people walk all over her because she didn't set proper boundaries, because she was so busy not judging that she couldn't see clearly where to set a boundary. So people just brought it more and more and more. So see, she taught me that, hey, it's beautiful to be compassionate, but you have to have a certain level of self-love to set these boundaries. She taught me both of those, being unaware of that. And I could do the same like with my father. So I think that's a good key, is that when you can find their biggest obstacle and then find out what the so-called good vibration that comes out of that obstacle. Because again, there's always the polarity. If there's something negative, there's something positive that exists. And see, it changes our own judgment and our attachment to that view or that judgment of them, to see that, oh, there's a high side and low side. For many extroverts, the high side is that they meet a lot of new people and that they're able to travel the world with ease. But the low side is they're not always attentive to their family. And many times the children will feel like they're not important enough to the extrovert. The introvert is there to nurture, is there to care, but see, then they play helicopter parent. And so early in life, the kid loves the nurturing, but then later in life, they don't like the restrictions that comes with that. So I think that's important for our listeners to hear, that when we step out of judgment and into investigator, then we're looking for a high vibration of a situation and the low vibration of the situation. And then we find where we play those roles out. And this is how we dissolve that family lineage, that everyone's either mother, father, or their environment of who plays those roles have a drastic effect on our mental, energetic, just all 5 levels, our makeup.
So getting back to the story, I think we're saying that they're both overreacting because they're both bringing very similar energies and just matching energies. But if people out there find themselves in this kind of like mundane energy where there's no excitement in their life, they're just easily upset, and that's kind of moving toward their relationships, what are some things that they can do immediately if they're hearing this and are like, oh yeah, I kind of am stuck in that rut, energetic sludge? What are some quick things that they could do to kind of reliven their life?
Yeah, one thing is to, have an apologetic, or we call it to be in neutrality, to learn to live in neutrality, to where you can say something like he could have nipped it in the bud when she said, oh, I'm going to just go up here and die. And he could have said, well, I'm sure you're trying to convey something important, but I don't exactly understand what that means. Whenever you're ready, please let me know what you were meaning by that statement. And that could have nipped it. Or she could have nipped it when he said that back. Well, I hope you do die, or whatever the reaction comment was. For her to be able to say, well, I'm sure you're looking to convey something to me that I'm not understanding with this choice of words, but, I'm not going to judge you. And see, this sounds simple to say, but when you're in that emotional reaction, this is what changes the synopsis of the brain. Is when somebody emotionally reacts at me, I'm going to learn to not emotionally react back. And the way that I see to do that, the way I work with my clients, is first you got to take the responsibility, and to be able to accept that, yeah, she is going to say snide comments, because that's maybe what they've been in, say, 13 years of a marriage, and that's what they do. But as soon as she catches it, to bring that in of, hey, that wasn't a good expression about, or the optimal expression about what I wanted to get across. I'm just feeling irritated right now. I'll be able to say it better later. And see, that shows an interest in resolving. And most people are looking for resolve, but they're too busy attacking to come to the resolve. And it does come kind of down to who's going to be the bigger person here. And part of that acceptance is you're going to take a few more beatings when you're the one stepping up to the plate to shift the energy. That means many times the buck's going to stop with you. So that means that you get that ugly goo thrown on you more than it gets thrown on them. But this is part of development work. Self-development is not fair. It's letting the word fair just dissolve in the ethers. And it's about being the way shower and being the example. But you can have drastic effects on other people that you care a lot about and love by stopping to tell them what they should do and simply exemplifying what you wish that they would do. And then over a period of time, if that person doesn't make the adjustments, then again, the energy has told you, do you want to just be in this forever where you just take more of it than they're going to? And that's an opportunity for a boundary.
Yeah, it's a tough situation when, maybe in a marriage things were great and then just slowly kind of lose connection over time and find yourself in a situation like this where you're just kind of trying to get through life and you say the wrong thing, the other person's already kind of on the edge, and it turns into this, couple day energetic standoff, and it seems like her and her kids are going to therapy and he's not, and she wants him to, but maybe he's resistant to that. And I don't know, if somebody's resistant to therapy, then they're probably not open to change or
Right.
looking at themselves. And so it's just a tough situation to be in.
It is, but this is where we have to, stand in our power to see that, it depends on what kind of vibration you're looking to be in, and to give somebody an opportunity to change, but them not willing to change, then that just turns into sacrifice, to stay in that kind of situation. There's plenty of people that do that, but many people feel that like marriage vows is a promise forever. I would choose and suggest people maybe not to put that forever stuff into their agreements with people, because that doesn't mean just because somebody says it that they're going to be able to keep those agreements. So I'd rather hear people say like, I look forward to being with you as long as we're loving to each other and as long as we're assisting each other in this life path. And if that ever changes, then I hope to have the wisdom for both of us to move on in a healthy way. But that's getting into, once again, those vows are supposed to be what's important to you. And unfortunately, most people copy other people's vows, and this forever thing is put in there. And so I'm not judging that way. I'm just saying these are some of the obstacles that way brings up when they feel like they can't get out of a marriage and they're just stuck with this situation and somebody that's not going to change or grow. And yeah, that's a very tough life to live, but lots of people, that's their choice and that's what they choose.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I think we all grow at different speeds, and sometimes that happens in a relationship, and is something that if you're honest with yourself and you're honest with your own growth, then like you mentioned, the sacrifice that could come in. You may have to sacrifice your own growth just to stay in the same vibration or relationship or contract with somebody else. And I know you're probably going to say that this has been happening throughout aeons and aeons, but it seems like there's so much more friction in this world, or opportunities for things to become catalysts for one's growth, that like maybe people are just growing all different ways, versus maybe 50 to 100 years ago, there was less circumstances or less opportunities for growth because there was less going on. There's less knowledge about what's happening in these worlds. There's less media manipulation, poking people's emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like we're just being bombarded with influences to pull us in all these directions, and that can play a role. But I understand if you say, well, this stuff has been happening, because it is. We're always being poked and prodded to move in certain directions, but I just feel like now there's so many opportunities for people to wake up or grow or move in certain directions that it's so easy for two people to grow apart.
Yeah, it's also, so easy now to get overwhelmed.
And separate, because now it's just commonplace that people just get divorced. So now, because of that, then people don't take the vows seriously anymore.
Yeah. And this is where the opportunity is for the one truly seeking consciousness to utilize the relationship they're in to make sure that they do their work to break their pattern before moving on, to not continue that pattern. Unfortunately, most people don't do the work that they need, and they just think that it's the person. When we've discussed over and over that it's not the person, it's the role they're playing. And when you change what negatively affects you, then they have the opportunity to not play that role with you. I've proven this time and time again with people, that when I make my shift of how I'm relating to whatever they're saying or whatever they're doing, then it changes their need on a subconscious level to bring that situation to me. Now, they may take it to somebody else. So, see, I'm not saying that it changes them as a person. It changes our relating and the energetic charge between us because, once again, everything needs friction to grow. And anything that you want to stop, you stop resisting, you stop giving it any type of resistance or friction. And that's where self-development and a person being clear of who they are, what they're passionate about, and how they exemplify that passion can navigate these waters so much easier because they're not trying to convince anybody. They're not trying to change anybody. They're simply choosing, oh, I'm not in resonance with that. Would you like to try to give that to me another way? No, this is the way I want to give it. Okay, well, then I'm going to leave and I'm going to go do something beautiful while you're in that state, or stay there and get abused. That's the opportunity. So, I think it's important for one to choose that, one of the most self-love acts there is just to say, I'm not going to communicate with anybody that's doing it in a non-loving way, whether it's joking or whatever. And once you start navigating your life like that, people either change the way they're coming at you, or you will find, oh, it's time for me to move on from this person, because here's the key though, because they don't bother me anymore when they come and try to belittle me or play that narcissist role, because I've been in it. I don't agree with you and the things that you're saying. I've worked through that vulnerability. I've worked through that insecurity. And now I'm just seeing you as a bully. So now I'm confident that I can move on to my next relationship, and I'm not going to attract somebody in that's going to belittle me to make me set a boundary to take up for myself, because that's what I've currently been doing for the last year or two. Not just a few weeks, not just a few days, not even a few months. But just remember that it takes a minimum of 3 months to start a new lifestyle. So make sure you really put your time in, or you're just going to go to another relationship and attract something very similar. And unfortunately, many people fool themselves and think they're over something way before they actually are. And life will give you that reminder.
Yes, and I think we can wrap this one up. Would you say? Do you have anything else to add?
No, I think just the main focus is just to see that there's just always an opportunity for you to do your own work, and then an opportunity to communicate that work and find out really clearly whether somebody's supporting you to grow, or whether somebody's really trying to hold you in a box and keep you like stuck where you're at. And those people are almost always going to hold somebody back. So all these relating and relationships are just really a self check-in about how you feel about yourself. If you allow somebody to belittle you and tear you down, then more than likely that's because you belittle and tear yourself down. You stop doing that, you learn a different path. You're not going to resonate the same way. You're not even going to need to feel a need to defend. Like with me, I happen to know that everything is God. Everything is that divine energy. So I can work in my profession with an atheist or somebody that doesn't believe at all, because I'm not challenged by that. I'm very clear that there has to be people, due to the principle and the pillar of polarity versus duality, opposites have to exist. But see, if I accept that atheist for exactly who they are, where they are, without feeling a need to force anything on them, then they wind up asking questions, and they wind up being open in a way that maybe they've never been before. So that's the thing about accepting that the second pillar of polarity versus duality, is that when you're able to accept that opposites have to exist, and hey, I'm not trying to change you, I'm just deciding how much time I'm going to spend in this energy. That becomes a whole different level of empowerment.
Yes, and if you would like Alexander to look deep into your relationships, or even help you get on your path to your self-growth journey, you can reach out to him at alexander@thejustphilosophy.com, or visit his website at thejustphilosophy.com. And of course, if you enjoy the topics that we discuss here on the Wise podcast, you can sign up for our complete membership by going to wisewisepodcast.com, clicking on the Get Complete in the upper right-hand corner, and get over 170 episodes from our past 7+ years. It's been an honor, Alexander.
Beautiful. Man.
Thank you for taking us on this journey, and we will see you on the next episode.
Much
Thank
love.
you.
Thank you for listening to this free version of the Wise podcast. To hear the complete conversation and go deeper into the application of the tools and techniques of the Just philosophy, head on over to wisewisepodcast.com and become a premium member. You'll get to hear all of our complete conversations, including the complete episodes of our Inward Journey story series and our entire back catalog, and continue your self-development journey with us. We honor your dedication to self-growth, overall wellness, and continuing to ask the wise.
And remember, gradual changes over long periods of time equals lasting results.
Continue on your self-growth journey by visiting thejustphilosophy.com, where you are able to connect personally by booking a private consultation with Alexander in person, by phone, or Zoom. Uncover your authentic self more easily with a human design or destiny card consultation. Here you will gain information about your energetic makeup, personality, and your higher self, as well as navigating your way through your relationships. There are also multiple types of reports available for purchase that help you gain insight into your career, relationships, and opportunities for self-growth. The site also allows you to view a calendar of Alexander's live performances and class schedule, peruse other products such as shirts, CDs, and finally, the revolutionary VibroTune vibrational sound therapy tables. These contoured therapy tables allow you to bathe in a vibrational sonic bath of frequencies, bringing you into alignment on all levels. You will be feeling and hearing calming music synced through vibration and frequency. So again, you can grab all this goodness at thejustphilosophy.com, thejustphilosophy.com. The Just Philosophy, as discussed in this podcast, has been developed by Alexander over the last 25 years in his personal studies, private practice, and professional environment. The information discussed is intended for educational purposes only and is not meant as a replacement for conventional medicine. Just remember, knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. Seek the wise. We want to thank you for working on you. Keep shining your light and refining your vibe.